Whose Turn Is It Anyway is excited to announce the Devon Board Game Weekend at the Fox and Hounds Hotel in Eggersford near Exeter. This event begins on Friday the 17th of October to Sunday the 19th of October. For more details on how to get tickets, follow the link in our show notes and we'd love to get a game with you there.
Hello and welcome to Whose Turn Is It Anyway, a podcast where we talk about our favourite board games. My name is Adrian. I have with me the owner of the Cheesy Bangers, that's Becky.
Hi everyone.
And judging from your playlist, do you like some Cheesy Bangers as well? That's our guest, Shawn.
Hi, I certainly do. That's very true.
Well, so this is one of our expansion episodes where we get to talk to some lovely members of the board game community. So we have Shawn with us from Allies or Enemies Games. He's here to talk a little bit about some upcoming projects and also just the life of an indie publisher as well, and sort of go through a few bits and pieces there. So how are you doing today, Shawn?
I'm doing great. Yeah, another beautiful hot London day. When I moved here, everyone said, watch out, London is so hot all the time, right? Famously, worldwide, it's what it's known for. Yeah, it's been scorching. So I'm scorching. I got a fan on me. So if anyone hears that in the background, don't worry. I'm not on an airplane. But yeah, it's, but other than that, and even because of that, I think I'm doing great.
Good. That's great to hear. So, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you and sort of Allies or Enemies Gaming and kind of a little bit about how you got into the hobby itself, this glorious board gaming hobby?
Yeah. So Allies or Enemies it started out as a YouTube channel. So that's my wife, Jess, and I. We do a YouTube channel where we talk about games, we review games, we do top 10 lists, all that fun stuff, just like what you guys do as well, except on YouTube instead of on podcast. And so we've been doing that for 5-ish years, but it's always been in the back of my head to design games ever since I was a little kid. And really, gaming started for me with my mom. I used to, every day I'd come home from school, play games with my mom, pretty much constantly. And so that started with stuff like Careers and Globetrotters, which I think only was released in Canada and Sweden.
I was going to say that isn't ringing a bell for me, but
no, if you could find it,
the nostalgia fact.
I remember it being very, very good. I do not know if it holds up. You traveled around the world and you got these keys to the city and you could gamble in Macau. It was a really cool game. But yeah, so I started off playing games with my mom all the time and then kind of really got into it around like Ticket to Ride time. And it really built up and then traveled a lot. So I kind of lost that a little. And then my wife and I, just a bit before COVID, were in Bristol and we didn't have anything to do. And we went to a board game cafe and played Everdell just because it looked...
Is it Chance Encounters?
Yeah. And just because Everdell looked so cute. And then right after that, we went into a board game store and I asked for their biggest box of game, which I would never do now. So then they sold me Gloomhaven on the spot.
That'll do it, yeah.
And it's a big box, all right.
That was our deep dive all the way back into board games, was Everdell and Gloomhaven. And then it's just ballooned since then and gotten crazy. So yeah, I think in the last couple of years, I really decided, I'm finally going to really dive into this designing thing. And have been designing a whole bunch of games, but these are the two that I'm going to talk about here. The main one being Last Week of Summer, but I got another one too, Shakespeare, the card game. I want to mention a little. And so those are the first two that have really come out of that. And we're really excited to be actually like making a game. And it's scary too, because you're in the hobby, but you're on the other side of the fence, right? Where you're just talking about stuff, reviewing stuff. And then you put out your own thing and you think, oh boy, like now I'm opening those doors to all the folks like me. It's like when Roger Ebert, I think he wrote the Valley of the Dolls movie. I think this is true. Right. If this is not true, I'm going to look like a fool. But I think he wrote one of these movies and it was terrible. Well, it's kind of a great cult classic, but I don't think it was beloved by critics. And I feel like you see that happen sometimes. So as a critic, you're always a little worried, but I'm also very excited to get this out. So far, the feedback's been great too. So we're excited to be a board game company and kind of all sides of the table.
Well, I think if you have been in the hobby for a little while, and I think your journey sounds very similar to quite a lot of ours too, where you started really, really passionately about it, kind of drifted off a little bit sort of for a few years, and then kind of came back with another resurgence. I think that kind of means that you have gotten a real appreciation for what you like. And I think that can only help, I would guess, from a publishing and designing point of view. You know exactly what gaming means to you and what you want it to feel like, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Because I think a lot of my design really just comes from like, oh, this game's not out there. I wish this game was out there. Like, well, then I'll make it be out there. And I think that's really most of the games that I've put together. That's where they're coming from, is just I see something I wish I could play and I can't play it. So I think I'll play it. But you're right about the design or about the board game journey, because I think that first time it was really I think a lot of folks do this too, where I was just ticking off all the top 100 BGG games,
yeah,
right?
I've definitely been there.
And at the time, that was a very different list. That was like Thurn and Taxis, Dominion. It was a lot of that stuff, not to date myself too much, but it was a lot of that stuff. And it mostly was fine, but I kind of hit my limit. I think Thurn and Taxis, honestly, which I now appreciate, but at the time thought, oh boy, this is just, because all board games are math dressed up like fun. Thurn and Taxis is barely dressed. That is just, it's really, that's math. With a little bit of like fun coding on top of it. Now I really like it. But at the time I thought, this is maybe a bridge too far for me. And then you kind of reset that and you really find where you feel at home. And it's not, I don't think it's ever really that top 100. It's kind of some other weird pockets on that list that you are not on the list at all, that you end up finding that are kind of comfortable for you.
Yeah, I think definitely that's kind of my journey. When you kind of get into it, you almost go on like an acquisition, or maybe this is just me, in an acquisition kind of, I want to play this, I want to have this and this and this. And then kind of after a little while, you start finding your little vibe and your little niche, I guess, what you're really interested in, and kind of more curating your experience rather than just like a Pokemon, got to catch them all sort of approach.
Yeah. No, at first you're like, I need a tile placement game. I need a market manipulation game. I need a worker placement. Yeah. Now I got to have a social deduction game. I need 3 party games for these different. Yeah, you really need to fit every niche. And then you realize I've never opened that social deduction game and I'm never going to play that market manipulation game again. But boy, do I ever play these worker placement games. Maybe that's where my interests lie.
Yeah. So for our listeners who can't see this, Shawn's sitting behind a very nice collection of board games there. What do you think is your favorite game right now, would you say? What's been hitting your tables?
Oh, boy, that is such a tough question.
As he looks behind him to get in.
Yeah, because I've usually got like 4 that bounce around in that spot, which is Gaia Project, Ultimate Railroads, Anachrony, and a 4th one, which suddenly, Dune Imperium. But just lately, the only thing I want to play in the whole world is Western Legends. Every time someone wants to play a board game, I want to play Western Legends. And I do not think it is a perfect game, like design-wise. I think there's a lot of weird, kind of older things that are in there. But boy, just being a cowboy and getting to be a good guy or a bad guy and just doing cowboy stuff, robbing a train and robbing a bank. It is so much fun. It tells so many like fun little immersive stories. And I think that's what I've found myself leaning towards lately, is games that aren't story driven. But at the end of it, you've got this thing that I always call that like paintball conversation, that when you're done playing paintball, if you guys have ever played paintball, at the end of it, you're telling war stories, like you're really in it. Right? Where you're like, remember this time? And then when I was doing this, and then that guy like got me in the back. And when this other thing happened, that's the sort of thing that Western Legends gives me. And I think that's kind of the games that I'm really leaning towards lately, is the games that give you that, where at the end of it, you're like, oh yeah, remember this? Or, oh, if I made this choice, or remember this cool thing. I love when a game does that.
So did you pick up, because that was reprinted couple of years back now, I think it was, wasn't it? Was it last year? Did you pick it up then, or is it one that's been sat on the shelf for a little while? Or
no,
did you have it sat on the shelf for a little while and then just bought the new edition anyway?
I actually bought someone else who bought a new edition. I bought their old edition and then tracked down some of the older expansions for it as well. So yeah, so I've got my own new to me copy of the older version of the game.
Yeah. That's similar to my kind of experience with Adrian. I tend to buy his games from him when he upgrades for the latest version. And I think he knows that. He'll just tell me, oh, Becky, this game I'm playing, blah, blah, blah. And immediately you can see that, oh, yeah, I'm kind of interested in this. And then just randomly he's buying a new version and he's available now.
I always tell you that I'm upgrading and that's why. I would never do it.
But it works like a charm every time.
Yeah. Or he's just thinking, I can bank this. I can make money.
It's normally because it's like, well, the first edition, it's got a bit of character to it because they refined it in the second edition. If there's any word to use to sell Becky a game, it's got character, or it's got a bit of like, a bit of something like quirky about it. And suddenly Becky's like, oh, I'm all over it. So that's the sales technique I use to get rid of first editions. Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. I would rather, I don't know, there's something more beautiful in the like slightly wrong version. That's just not wrong, but that it's just not as nice as it could be. Like there's something nicer about it, that this is like how it was originally meant to look, and it has all its flaws and scars, and I kind of like that too.
Yeah, me too. So tell us a little bit more about how you're kind of embarking in this small publishing arena. How has it been for you?
Yeah, it's been a heck of a learning curve. I definitely came into it thinking I knew a lot more than I know, because there is a lot to learn about economics and shipping and all sorts of stuff. But I won't focus on that stuff too much, because I don't think it's not interesting to me. I don't think it's interesting to anyone else. But I think where it was interesting for me really was just design, just learning so much more about design, because I definitely came into that as well, thinking probably that I knew a little bit more than I did for sure. And I got into Last Week of Summer as a game that has a lot of little bits of games in it. So I started off designing this game that doesn't just have one core mechanic. It's got kind of 6 or 7 little mini core mechanics that had to start as big mechanics and then get boiled right down so they could each get explained in 10 seconds each, so that it became simple enough, but like there's a lot more under the hood, I think, than you'd first think. So that was both a difficult process and I think a really useful one for me, because it made me think about like why do polyomino puzzles work, and why do dice games work? What's interesting about that to people, and what's interesting about push your luck games, because all of that's in there. So I really had to think about each one and what's the math for each of those. Because like I said earlier, the board games are really math dressed up like fun. And I did not realize how true that was till I started making a game and was trying to put together one of the early locations had a set collection thing. So I needed there to be equal numbers of all these different cards with 3 different items on each card. And each of those items could be in a different kind of set. And I needed all those sets to be an equal amount. And I thought, oh my goodness, I wish I paid more attention in grade 11 math, because
this is algebra in a card.
Yeah. It exactly is.
Thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
because Dobble was famous for being like, this is maths where there's only the same symbol on one other card as this one. Like every card has the same one of the same symbol and only one. And I remember looking at the math of that and going, no.
How did they come to
who thought that level of math would become a party game?
So you really...
Well, I saw some kids playing it on the train yesterday, so it's still just as popular. And they were playing the Harry Potter version, and it upset me a little bit because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. They didn't know what the characters were on the cards. They didn't know the Harry Potter. They said, that guy, oh, it's a snake thing, isn't it? I thought, you don't even know Slytherin. Oh my... So clearly you don't need to understand the actual pictures you're using. It is just pure maths, isn't it? It's just pure maths.
Yeah, but I really understand now why there's so many mathematicians that are board game designers, because there really are oodles of them out there, oodles of mathematicians, oodles of teachers. And so you really do appreciate that a lot more when you're doing it and you're figuring out, oh, wait a sec, I actually really need to make these numbers work in all these different things so that the game's fun. So that was a big learning curve for me. And just how to get like the emotional experience that I wanted to get actually come across on the table. Because that was the biggest thing for me, is that I really wanted, especially with Last Week of Summer, there for the emotional attachment to your Last Week of Summer to be more than just like this pasted on theme that was kind of a catchphrase that I could suck people into. I wanted people to play the game, and at the end of the game, kind of, reminisce a little bit and be like, oh yeah, or to, whilst they're playing the game, drive towards the stuff that they would actually do. I love it when someone's playing the game and they're like, they just go to the skate park and you can tell that that's what they would have done, or they just go to the music store or whatever it is, because that's the thing that they would have done in real life, and that you can see them like attached to that, and to attach a bit, at least, I hope, to the mechanics of that as well. So trying to figure that out and have that emotional experience come through from like the math and the mechanics has really been an interesting puzzle for me to put together.
So did you have the idea of, I want to make a game about my Last Week of Summer, or did you have, right, I've got this idea for a game that I want to be multifaceted and have lots of many different kind of moving parts, and I want to think how best I can convey that? Was that kind of like a 50-50 thing, or did you have which kind of came first?
Yeah, it came 100% from the theme first. So the theme came out of I had just watched every John Hughes movie back to back over the course of a week or a week and a half or whatever it was. And I thought, I want a movie that feels like this, or I want a game that feels like this. So in the earlier versions, there was a lot more like meet cutes and stuff in there that got lost and never really quite fit. And that part ended up kind of falling off. Maybe it'll come back in an expansion. I don't know. But it had that. But really what I wanted to get is that feeling at like, at the end of Breakfast Club, of that, like of the air punch. Like I wanted that sort of thing, that sort of 80s feeling. So it came originally from that, is I'd seen so many things that were 80s, but they felt like that kind of, not really what the 80s felt like to me. Like they felt like that neon kind of fake version of the 80s that didn't quite feel like actual 80s. And I wanted it to feel like actually being in the arcade, or like that real, I don't know how to explain the feeling of the 80s, but as a kid in the 80s, it just felt
potential, I think.
Different.
Potential.
Yeah, that like, riding on your bike out to McDonald's to get like the chicken nuggets at the time, which had just come out. And I remember being real excited about it. But like that sort of thing, like I wanted that like kind of happy summer feeling that you only get when you're in high school or you're in school, and summer's like freedom. I wanted that. And so that's where that started from. But then the mechanics really came from, I love games that have a lot of little moving parts and that have a lot of variation that you can mix and match. So I think at the time I was playing a lot of Merchant's Cove, Tidal Blades, Anachrony. So there's a bunch of these games that have kind of modules that you can switch in and out. And that really appealed to me. So I wanted to take that, but not have it be quite so heavy as those games, especially Anachrony. So I wanted that, but something that was a lot more kind of gateway weight, but people could still have that experience. So mechanically, that's where it came from. But it really started with how do I make this like game that really feels like what I think the 80s was.
And you talked there about, wanting to make, that people naturally quite often will resonate towards what they would be doing in their last week of summer. Mm-hmm. How did you match the game types up to the thematic sort of overlay? Because there's definitely, each of those like mini games do feel like they belong to it, but I couldn't tell you why some of them I could, but some of them I was like, I can't tell you why this feels like this, but it does. So what was your process for kind of matching those up?
Right. Yeah. And those have changed a lot since the start as well. So some of those have been slightly with different things as it's gone. But so it's been kind of a mix of, I definitely had a list of stuff that had to be in there. So like I was going to have a skate park. I was going to have an arcade. That was like, absolutely. I wanted a video store, and that probably was the hardest path to get that to actually work. There were some very messy early versions of that. But then it was, I almost had like two columns on the sheet, right? Like I had mechanics that I thought could fit this and I thought could be boiled down to the place that I wanted to be able to boil it down, but still be interesting. And then locations that I thought I really needed to have. And there were probably 20 or so on each of those lists. And as I went and as I tried different things, I figured out things that didn't work and things that did work. And I kind of realized a few of the places that people were like, as I play tested it too, like, where's the video store? Why isn't there a video store? And I was like, I'm working on it. I know. So these were kind of, I think the 6 that both I held on to most, that I needed to be in there, and that I think people kind of, that you think 80s and you think town, and like I wanted to deliver the stuff that people expected to be in there. So hopefully these 6 kind of make the most sense to folks. But then I did really want the mechanics to feel like that thing. So there's been things I wanted to be in there that ended up not quite making it, just because I couldn't quite get the mechanics to work yet. And maybe they're in an expansion or something, fingers crossed. But yeah, so it was a bit of both sides of that coin.
So you mentioned your playtesters there a little bit. How does a independent publisher like yourself kind of get playtesters? Is it your friends? Do you ruthlessly bombard them constantly with games? Are you and your wife playing the games every single night? How does that sort of look? It's
really a mix. Yeah, it's definitely my friends have played it way too much. My wife has played it constantly. Oh boy, has she ever played it a lot. But the lucky thing with being in London is there's such a terrific playtest community here. It's amazing. You can playtest. I can easily playtest 3-4 nights a week with the official playtest groups, but there's enough other designers here who will just, we just pop over to each other's houses and we have little impromptu playtests as well. So there's a really nice community of designers. But you do need a mix, because designers give you a certain type of feedback. And, real players, like you're a Harry Potter fan, so I always say muggles, give you kind of the other kind of feedback, right? And both are really equally as important. And so you need it to be in front of both groups. So designers help a lot, especially in the early stages. But as you're getting to the end, being able to go to conventions, which thankfully there's a lot in the UK as well, has been really helpful. And that's even more where I've, roped friends into playing it, roped friends who don't play quite as many board games sometimes too into playing it, to really bounce it off of them as well.
So you mentioned the kind of good community that sort of small publishers have. What do you think, other than that community feel, what else is the best part about being a small publisher?
I think it's really, in board games, it's this really interesting, I feel like this interesting kind of new art form. Like I feel like it's this, I always enjoy these weird little communities that we all really feel like we know a lot about. And then you step just a tiny bit outside of that community and you realize how, normal people, like most of the world, has no idea.
Not a clue.
Even stuff that we think we're like, I check myself where I'm thinking, I'm not going to, I don't want to talk about Monopoly, but I'll just talk about something that they'll definitely know about. Like I'll talk about Scythe or Wingspan and they have normal people have no idea what I'm talking about. Like where our bar is so different. And so I love that. I love finding those weird little pockets. Like I used to do stand up, and I feel like that has a lot of that same sort of feel to it as well. Where it's like, I don't know, like a way less cool punk music almost, right? It's like this weird little scene that just we have. And I like that. I like that it's just such a small but like supportive little scene.
How about the unexpected challenges? You said there's so much more than you ever thought about designing a game. What's kind of been the biggest surprise for you?
Yeah, I think one of the early ones is when you realize, and I think every designer has this when they first do it, that the stuff that you're making actually has to get produced. And then you realize, oh boy, I got to cut back these components. Like when you really start to think with that more production brain than the development brain and the design brain. And I think that's actually a really interesting challenge. And it's made it more interesting for me to make games since I kind of had that aha moment, I guess, like forced upon me. I think that is a really helpful thing because it gives you like another parameter that's really helpful. But that was definitely
I was going to say it sounds sometimes having a little bit more of a kind of confined area makes you more creative because you kind of realize you've got to make it fit within this. I remember Chris Prescott, the designer of Zuli, was saying he was so blown away by the different amount of types of card that you could choose when you're publishing. So,
yes.
A regular person wouldn't think, oh, well, actually, does it matter if it's shiny? Does it matter if it fits in this kind of box or whatever? So have you had that same kind of...
Oh my goodness, have I ever. I can touch a card now and be like, oh yeah, this is a 320 ivory core with a linen finish with like no problem. Like you definitely have that. And you just think, how many boxes do I want to fit in a carton? How much weight does this need to have? How many pieces are going to fit in that box then? So what can I actually do? And like, I want it to have this certain price point, but I also want to offer, a surprising amount for that price point. How am I able to do that? And so there's a lot of logistics that go into that for sure. But it is a really, it's like with writing as well, right? It's always so much easier. If you tell a kid just write a story, they're just going to sit there for an hour. If you tell them write a story about a dragon and it's a Tuesday and they're going to 7-Eleven, they have no problem. So you really need that.
Nice. You mentioned obviously as well about the sort of some of those design process challenges, and I suppose this goes on to again about publishing challenges as well. A lot of people, when you ask for board game design advice or anything like that, first thing they'll say is you're going to have to learn how to cut out some of the board game you designed, sort of thing. You'll want to put everything in, you'll fall in love with every mechanic, it'll be tough. Obviously, the game, the last week of Summer Game is lots of little mini games around a central mechanic. Did that make it easier to cut things out, or was that kind of your way of shoehorning in everything that you wanted to get into the game, or sort of how did you find that whole experience?
Yeah, I think it made it easier to cut things out, honestly, because I had the advantage of I've got these little things that can kind of be treated almost separately, but fit within the core mechanic. The core mechanic being the card selection and as you're planning out your turn in the game. So just to really quickly explain the game, because it's probably helpful before I talk about all this stuff.
We're dancing around it a bit,
Yeah, so what the game is it's 1986, just finished high school. You got one more week left of summer before you got to go be a grown-up. So in that week, you're trying to squeeze in as much fun as you possibly can. And in order to do that, you've got a hand of cards. They each go to different locations. So each game you use usually 4 locations, 5 if you've got enough players for it. And so those cards are going to have each location. They've got a hanging out and a work card. And you're going to play 3 of those each day in AM, noon, and PM. And that's the places that you're going to go to. And everyone does this at the same time. And then you go to those places and you do little mini games. So there's like a video store that's in Mancala, an arcade that's a dice rolling game. There's a fast food that's a push your luck game where you can keep eating food, but if it's gross, you throw up and you like lose. There's a skate park that's like a polyomino puzzle. And there's also a record store that's like a market manipulation. So as albums get cool, they move up this track. But if they get too cool, they're not cool anymore and they drop back down to the bottom. And there's also you're spray painting the back of a convenience store like Hooligans, and that's kind of area control. So you got all these little mini games kind of around this core thing of playing out these cards. And then also when you go to places, your action actually changes depending on if you're with other people or not, because your friends can kind of distract you. Same thing with when you're working. If you don't have any customers, you get to goof off and kind of do the thing. So if you're at the movie store, you just watch a movie because no one showed up that day, but you make less money. So there's a little bit of deciding where everyone else goes, but there's also these cool kids that are at each place. And you want to be friends with the cool kids because they're the coolest kids in town. So everyone knows their schedule at the start of the day, and you'll move up this cool kid track and that gets you cassettes. And then the whole thing is based on getting these cassettes, which is getting these goals at each different location, being friends with the cool kid, going to parties each day. One of the locations is kind of like the star location. So whoever's doing best there at the end of that day gets to invited to the special party as well. And so all these things let you put cassettes out on the board, and cassettes equal memories, because for me, all my memories are tied to music in the 80s. So all of your cassettes equal your cool memories of the summer. And then that's like your mixtape of the summer. So that's kind of how the game sets out. But as you can imagine, getting to that 6 locations, like you were asking, there was a lot of locations, and there was a lot cut late as well. But because of how the mechanics kind of work, it wasn't too hard to pull those out and plug other ones in. And it was tough because there was one I loved and I really wanted it to work, based around roller skating and roller derby, because I'm just a nuts fan of roller derby. And I really wanted roller derby to be in there. But it just didn't quite work how I wanted it to work. So maybe some point in the future. But if people have play tested it, there's probably oodles of folks out there who have played various versions of this roller derby location that used to exist, and will be like, oh, what happened to that? I hope they're like, well, it didn't quite work. So we picked the right ones, but it didn't quite work. And so that was one that was like, I hate to cut this, but I've got to cut it. Because I liked it artistically too. Like I thought it looked really cool, but yeah. So yeah, that was a very long way of answering your question, but it did make it a little bit easier to be able to chop out some of those things. And I can always tell myself, as I have already a couple times here in this conversation, maybe it's part of an expansion, right? Because it's a very expandable game. So hopefully folks like it enough, and then I can, continue to work on those and tweak those and get those to the place where I'm comfortable with them. And then those become part of the game in the future.
I was waiting for you to say that it'll become an expansion, because we've heard that a few times in various just interviews either on the podcast or off, where people are like, so it kind of made it into my expansion folder where I would see which bits worked and which bits didn't once it hit retail, and then start adding them to expansions and all that lot. So when you were sort of saying, I'll tell myself it'll just go into an expansion and make it easier to cut now. And then we'll see how it goes. I was kind of like, is he going to say that? Because that'd be the way I would treat it. As you say, you've developed a game that I think is very easy to put expansions in. I don't know if easy is quite the right word, but it's certainly easy to expand on by adding these locations. And I know personally, I'd probably tell myself with every mechanic that didn't work, it's fine, you'll come back later in an expansion, put it in the box sort of thing.
Yeah, you really do. Yeah, I used to do a lot of improv. And we would always say, if you had a scene idea that didn't quite work, it's all right. Improv Jesus is enjoying it in improv heaven. And so I kind of think that with these board game expansions.
I think because I haven't been lucky enough to try it. I didn't get a chance to play it at the UKGE, but the thing that looks so appealing about it is its replayability, because you can kind of mix and match what you have and what you kind of choose to prioritize, I guess. And for me, that's a really important part of a game, as much a part of what's the experience like, but can I change this up? A bit like when you're reading a novel, you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, what's going to happen with this? Completely making this kind of crazy stories in your mind about characters that are not even real. I like the fact that in a board game, you can kind of, if you can change that experience up a little bit, I think that's a really appealing part of it. Yeah,
that was definitely a big thing for me, because when I was putting it together too, I really wanted it to be able to fit for this kind of gateway, maybe gateway plus audience. So I'm really kind of gunning for that Wingspanish level audience. And with that audience, there's just a lot of variability, because I think a lot of new gamers or newish gamers who are kind of really getting into hobby games really still like there to be dice. They still really like there to be that little bit of randomness. But other gamers who have been playing a little bit more, or maybe not even playing, because I think it kind of ebbs and flows, right? I think I started off, I really wanted that randomness. And then I was like, oh, no, poo-pooed that. Oh, no, it all open information and as German as I can get it. And then I think in recent years, I kind of have fallen back the other way, where I'm like, you know what? A good game of Strike is just can't be beat. It's really fun. Can't Stop is a tremendous game. And some dice are just fine. Some dice sometimes are terrific. But I wanted to be able to reach kind of both sides of that as well. And, some days you want to be able to have that randomness, and some days you want to be able to mess with people a bit more. Some days you want it to be a bit more thinky. So I wanted people to be able to take those in and out and have those different experiences for their different friends as well. So if you got friends coming over who like a meaner game, then you play with the Q Mart and the record store. If you've got friends coming over and they do not like a mean game, you take those out and you put in the random ones, which are a little bit more friendly to newer gamers.
Yeah, that sounds perfect for the kind of stuff I like. So my husband is a very heavy strategy type of a gamer, doesn't really like the kind of randomness of dice games. Yet I'm trying to sort of lure some of my other friends in. So for them, I love the idea that I can play the same game and I can have a really good awareness of how it works, because that's what you need when you're teaching someone, right? But I can put the kind of, I like how you sort of said the kinder, the less mean kind of things into it. When that suddenly clicks with people, you can ramp up that sort of the depth of the game, I guess. And I think that sounds like a really great selling point of last week's summer.
Yeah, that was really one of the things that I wanted in there. And it's never going to be like heavy. I certainly don't want to mislead folks, but it definitely can have a little more depth to it. I think the record store, Tops Records, it's called. I should use its full name. But Tops Records is definitely the most like that, because it's a mix of set collection and market manipulation. And I think market manipulation is a mechanic that is a little trickier for newer gamers. And so that's one that I have, like, maybe don't use this in your first game. So learn this other stuff. And then when you're learning that, it doesn't feel like so much overhead to be able to pick up that stuff. And then my hope with it is that it helps kind of ease folks into some other great games too, that maybe then they're like, oh, cool, polyominoes, I know this from this. Now I feel more comfortable playing this other very cool game. And market manipulation, now I know this from this. Now I can go play Furnace, and, which is a phenomenal game. Like, so my hope is that it can lead you into other stuff.
And I think I can see like Shackleton base behind you. I'm pretty sure that's what I can see behind you.
Oh yeah,
obviously
probably.
That's obviously that's kind of a similar thing where you can kind of choose the type of game you have. And we're noticing, I talked about this a couple of times on the podcast, we're kind of noticing a sway towards that modularity of a sort of, here's the base, but you kind of pick what kind of game you want in that. Was that like was that a deliberate choice on your part to go that way, or sort of, because I say it's a bit in trend at the moment, was it something you saw and thought, perfect, this like works for me? Or was it just sort of happenstance that you sort of got this at the same time as some of the other publishers are?
Yeah, well,
bringing out similar
I've been working on it for 2-3 years, so Shackleton Base definitely was not an influence, but it's a game I really like, and I think it's just something I like. Like, I just enjoy that in a game. I get bored of stuff easy, so I love when things can be mix and match like that. Like, even with video games, I'm not the sort of person who can sit and play a like 200-hour RPG kind of game. I lean into stuff like Overwatch, where you're a different character who's got a really different feel every single game, and it only takes me 15 minutes. Like, that's just kind of my personality. So I think that's just me putting what I like into a game. Like, I'm just kind of trying to make a game I'd want to play. And I like when I can do that. I like when there's just different paths I can go down in a game each time.
That's fair. That sounds kind of like me as well. Certainly for video games. Sometimes with board games, I do like mine I like mine German, as you put it.
Yeah. As do I. I've got a lot of very beige games behind me, and a lot more where you can't see them too. So I definitely do lean that way as well.
But yeah, for video games, I'm more of a sort of instant reward. Like, if I can't get into it within sort of 20 minutes, it's probably not getting turned back on after the first play sort of thing. So I can appreciate that. Also, so, we stopped by and I managed to get a demo game of that in, and we saw the Shakespeare, the card game that you're showing off as well. So do you want to give that a little bit of time in the light, as it were, to sort of talk about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I'm really excited about that game. So Shakespeare, the card game, is it's a card game. It's about Shakespeare. But the big hook to it is really that you can win one of three ways. So you can win by tragedy, history, or comedy. So that's Shakespeare's 3 types of plays. And so you've got a whole bunch of cards, and they all are really based on Shakespeare's different characters. And I like this idea of like a shared, like an MCU of Shakespeare, because I'm a Shakespeare nut. So I wanted to, I just needed something to get that out of me as well. It's like I'm a John Hughes nut, I'm a Shakespeare nut. So I wanted there to be this to really appeal to Shakespeare fans. But so it's history, comedy, and tragedy. So with history, you've got all these cards that are kind of taking over different countries. If ever you control 4 different countries, you win the game. That's kind of a push-pull tug-of-war thing. Oh, and this is a 2-player specific card game I should mention as well. The tragedy cards all have a death trigger. So they all have different ways that they'll die. So like Iago dies if the other person has three different couples who are in love, because that's too much love for Iago. So he just calls it quits. Othello, if you've got two mismatched lovers in your hand, you have to discard them and kill Othello, which is, I know, kind of dark. It's kind of sad. But there's everyone's got Romeo and Juliet die if they're in your hand together. Julius Caesar dies if you've got too much power in one country. If you have three cards in one country, because that's the triumvirate that's killing Julius Caesar. So they all have these different little death triggers. And if ever you kill 4 cards, you win the game. So if you take over 4 lands or you kill 4 cards, you win the game. And then the other way is if you marry 4 couples. So there's a whole bunch of different couples from all the different plays, and you're just trying to pair those up. But what helps you do that is the 4th type of card, which are these chaos cards. And that's stuff like Bottom and Puck and the witches from Macbeth, and Jacques and all sorts of folks from all sorts of different plays. And they're just causing trouble for everything else. So they're like, Puck can make 2 different lovers join together, whether or not they want to. Bottom can marry anybody by kind of tricking them. Titania can fix those pairings if they've been mixed up too much. So there's all of that sort of stuff in there. And you're just racing to one of those 3 win conditions. Really quick little game. It's like 15-ish minutes to play. And yeah, I think I met every single English teacher who was at UKG. It really has an audience. But I did find some folks who aren't big Shakespeare fans and still got a lot out of it, still really did enjoy the game. But I think if you're into Shakespeare, you're going to enjoy, how thematic the powers are and the little quotes on the bottom and all that stuff.
So you say that you're a big Shakespeare nut, and that's what sort of made you want to design this game. Is that because you could see how the kind of complexity of his work works well with the mechanics that you had, or did you just think, I'm going to design something that kind of really mixes Shakespeare up?
I just kind of got in my head one day, wouldn't it be cool if there was a Shakespeare game that had 3 endgame triggers that were comedy, history, or tragedy? And so I just started from that. And then from that, kind of the game, it didn't fall into place. It went through a bunch of iterations. The first of which had a board and all sorts of stuff. And then it got kind of pared down to its heart. And I think it works well now. And I also liked the idea of this shared universe of Shakespeare characters, of like them all being able to kind of smush together. Timon of Athens running into Beatrice and Benedict. I just really like that idea. So I thought, well, I'll make that happen.
I find it really interesting. This kind of sort of touches on Last Week of Summer as well. And we mentioned Shackleton Base. I love how clearly there's this kind of almost shared creative idea that must kind of be rippling through publishers' minds. Because like you mentioned, your games have been 2-3 years in the making. So this is not that you've been influenced by these guys, but similar to Lost Ruins of Arnak and Dune Imperium, they share a lot of the same kind of DNA, but they were obviously being thought of around about the same time. So I just find that really interesting, that there's obviously some kind of zeitgeist that happens between publishers that isn't really spoken about, but clearly there's some kind of shared idea. And I think the idea of that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I haven't seen that as much with the Shakespeare game. I don't know if there are other Shakespeare games coming out. I think there always are. He's been a pretty big deal for quite a long time. But yeah, I've definitely seen that with the 80s games. And it is interesting, like you mentioned, you see that a lot with movies as well, right? Like you saw that with Dante's Peak and Volcano that one year. What a weird thing that we had 2 urban volcano movies. Or you saw it with Deep Impact and Armageddon, or you saw it it seems to happen that there must be some trigger 2 years earlier that, I don't know, whoever's the other folks making the 80s game, maybe I don't know why we started watching every John Hughes movie. Maybe there was something on and it triggered a bunch of folks to do that. And then it made a bunch of folks go, you know what, there needs to be an 80s game. It might have been that. I don't know.
Because when you're talking about the kind of different mechanics and ways you can win in the Shakespeare game, it kind of immediately made me think of Lord of the Rings, Duel for Middle-earth. So that you're playing a card game that is understandable, things mix with things, but there are completely different ways in order to get the win. And they're not really linked together, but it's like a big meta game overall. So yeah, it's just, I find it really interesting that there's obviously something in the water that tells people I want to make something like this.
Yeah, and when I saw that come out, honestly, I was like, oh no, how? And then when I saw how they did their win conditions, I thought, phew, these are different. That's great. I'm very happy. None of these are the same. But obviously, Seven Wonders has been doing the 3 different win conditions forever and ever and ever. And and it's not the only one.
2 points before, wasn't it? So that was So what they've done is they've turned it into actual win conditions, haven't they? And then as you say, that's sort of
So I'm sure that was in there.
A rising tide fixes everything, right? Like, so I don't think it's lost Runes of Arnak hasn't sort of lost out to the fact that Dune Imperium is kind of similar. I mean, I know which side my bread's buttered for Lost Runes of Arnak for me every time.
Right.
Side,
I love both.
You have different opinions about this. Yeah, I get both.
Both are terrific.
Arnak for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I think that neither of them kind of lose out to the fact that the other one is sort of similar. So I think if people like that mechanic, they're definitely prepared to try both things. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure I'm not denting Lord of the Rings 7 Wonders in any way whatsoever. And it's a terrific game too. So I do think like when you first hear the 3 win conditions, you definitely, and you're certainly not the first one to say, oh yeah, that certainly sounds similar. But I think once you play it, because how you get the cards, how you play the cards, everything else is so different. My hope is that there's certainly a lot of room in people's collection for both of those as well, because I think you are going to have quite a different experience than you are with 7 Wonders, but it's a great game.
Again, it's a smallish card game, isn't it? It's, Shakespeare, the card game. So in terms of Kallax cubage, it's not going to take up too much space in that regard, is it?
No, all it is a deck of 50. Well, right now we're finalizing it, but let's say 56 today. 56 cards.
Nice. So so that could certainly fit in most people's collections, I think. For you're sort of saying MCU, I was thinking Kingdom Hearts, of that sort of let's amalgamate all the worlds together and just sort of, even if it's not your favorite play or something like that, the fact that the character turns up and interacts in some way with another play, you might sort of get a kick out of that.
I've always loved that. I loved it in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Not so much the movie, but the comic books is one of my favorite examples of that. The movie. There's a reason Sean Connery retired right after, but the comic books, terrific.
Nice. So I think this actually leads us on quite nicely to while we're talking about sort of potential cheesy stuff, is if we think about last week of summer, what makes up Sean's last week of summer? So out of your current 6 locations, which is the one you're visiting? I'm guessing you're not going to say it's the graffiti spot.
Yeah, no, I'm not that much of a hooligan, especially in Canada. It's too cold to graffiti in Canada. Who would even see it? You just drive by. No, it's the music store. I was in, oh boy, like every day we would visit. We had a little circle of, I think, 3 different secondhand music shops that we'd go to in Calgary, which is where I grew up. So I grew up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. The mean streets. Just as mean as you'd think. But yeah, so we'd go to these different record shops, and we would do that every weekend. We would go by and we would come home with a bundle of albums. And so I just had shelves of board games now used to be shelves of CDs. So yeah, it would have definitely been the music stop. Also video store though. I remember doing so many of those 7 days for $7, 7 movies. They had that at this little...
Wow, that sounds like a good deal.
It was great. Yeah, this little no-name video store. And in British pounds, that's like $2.50. But this little no-name video store that was near me had this deal. And so I'd go there and rent movies every couple weeks, and it was terrific. So yeah, I did that a lot too. I got to admit, I had a skateboard. I skated on it a little bit, but I never got past being able to, like, the fanciest trick I could do is maybe ollie a curb. And other than that, I could, like, the best I could do was just the stand and don't fall down. And that was rare. So
I didn't even master that.
Yeah.
Mine mine was roller hockey. So you're talking about roller derby, and I was like, okay, that's roller skates rather than roller blades. But I played quite a bit of roller hockey. And
Nice.
I recently had enough of midlife crisis that I was like, I'll try skateboarding, and I just about got the board off the ground a few times, and then was like, man, this is hard work in your late 30s, early 40s trying to.
Yeah, I've really been thinking about buying a skateboard, and my wife is like, you will die. You can't do it. But I've really been thinking about it for sure. And I love to hear that you played hockey. Roller hockey, but that's close. That's close to proper hockey.
Yeah. I tried ice hockey, and it's a complete, like here in England, it's probably not the same level.
Yeah.
It was really different. I thought, I can do roller hockey. I can clearly ice hockey. It's going to be roughly the same. It is not even close. It's such a different sport.
Yeah, if we really did my last week of summer, it would be mostly hockey. That's all I did at that time of my life. I think it was, we were either playing on the ice, which we just call hockey. I think this is the only country that calls it ice hockey. But we just call it hockey. And so, yeah, I was on the ice all the time, or playing roller hockey when we couldn't get on the ice, or playing in shoes, playing street hockey, where you yell car all the time and have to move the nets because you play on the literal street. Yeah, we did that all the time too. So that was an awful lot of my summer, but for the locations, it was definitely the record store I was at all the time. And the video store I was at quite a bit. So I guess the more indoor locations.
So I was thinking about this. So like my last week of summer would have been 2000 and something, 2002,
aging yourself there.
2003. So like it's not an 80s last week of summer for me. So I was like trying to think through like, what was my most rented stuff and all that. And I was thinking by that point we were just about starting downloads, I think. So it wouldn't have been rent. I cleared out my local Blockbuster when that closed down. I remember that much. What would be your sort of repeat picks in your last week of summer for those for the videos and the CDs?
So mine, I was lucky because my last week was 1994, would have been my last year, which is the greatest year of all time for music and for movies. And I don't even think it's close.
Sell us, go on then.
I bet a lot of folks think that, but it really is. So it was Pulp Fiction would have been the big movie that year. And we were like obsessed with it. One of my friends, drama, we got to do an end of year play based on whatever, we could make a play out of anything we felt like. And one of my friends did Pulp Fiction, and I got to play Brent, the kid who gets shot in the chair with the big kahuna burger.
Yeah.
Because he keeps saying what too much. That was my big role. So Pulp Fiction would have been the movie that we were just watching over and over. There was other movies though, like I got really into kung fu movies, I think that year. So I was watching a lot of Sonny Chiba movies, Street Fighter and Son of Street Fighter and Sister Street Fighter.
Oh, okay.
And I think that actually came from Tarantino too, because those are all mentioned in True Romance. As well.
Oh,
but
of course.
Yeah, so it would have been that stuff. Also the movie Tombstone. I was a big fan of that. And Young Guns. Those are both those, like, there's a little resurgence of cool Westerns with like these cool young actors. So those would have been some of the movies. And then for music, it was De La Soul, 9 Inch Nails, Ani DeFranco, Tori Amos, Beck, Beastie Boys. It was pretty cool. There was some amazing music.
That's a pretty good lineup. That is a pretty good lineup.
Yeah, Pixies. Pixies were a smidge before that, maybe, was their last one. But Sonic Youth was going hot at that time. It was a pretty rad time to be into music. So all that stuff I still listen to constantly too, I think.
Yeah, again, slightly different years, but definitely sort of, I was thinking like Linkin Park was a big part of my sort of college and sixth form years and all that kind of stuff. And I just think to myself, I listen to so much of that still. Like, as much as I sort of listen to stuff I listened since then, if I'm really really feeling in the mood for it, I still go back and revisit, let's say, like 9 Inch Nails and him and all that kind of stuff. And then like Linkin Park and AFI and all that kind of stuff are all kind of in that sort of time period and sort of stuff I would listen to again. So yes, there's some great choices in there.
Well, I feel like that is a bit of the draw of that idea of your last week of summer, because I think that kind of becomes this little like time capsule that gets locked in your mind. And so many folks I know, the music that was that year becomes like just so, like the first CD I bought, because I was buying cassettes up and before that, but the first CD I ever bought was REM Eponymous, and it's still one of my favorite albums of all time. It's a kind of a cheesy favorite album because it's actually a best of like their first 5 albums, but I love REM. And so that album, or like The Cure had an amazing album that year too. There's just so much rad punk stuff that was happening at that time too. The Descendants. So there's just so much stuff. The Descendants were a bit before that, but they still had some cool stuff. And I think also you're discovering stuff at the wrong year too, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, this band, like all of a sudden I feel like that's the year I learned about Velvet Underground. And I learned about Joy Division. And yeah, so I feel like those happened that year, even though I'm about 15 years too late on those. So there's all that too, but it's just whatever your life was, it's that little time capsule. And I feel like you hold on to that still, what happened in that last year of high school.
And I think that's one really great thing about your game. It is going to spark those kind of conversations, even if you have, for that year for you was different to your neighbour's year. It's going to spark those really raw, oh, this was when I was learning to be an adult, or that music is going to spark so many different memories, and it's a really lovely nostalgic feeling, I think.
Yeah, I'm hoping folks get that from it. And I definitely see people have those little moments too. And I love that when people are like, oh yeah, I should get another skateboard. And I think, oh no, I just caused another injury.
Well, I work in operating theatres, so please don't encourage anybody to be skateboarding or doing crazy stuff over the weekend.
So I think that's it for our sort of main bit. So do you want to plug away at all of your kind of what's coming up and when things are coming out and what to look for from Allies or Enemies?
Yeah, so you can find us on our channel. So we're Allies or Enemies at YouTube. We also have an Instagram. I don't use it as much, but you can definitely find us on YouTube. I believe we also have a Discord, but that I use far less than the Instagram. But please go on there. Maybe you can make it come to life. But you can find us, Allies or Enemies, all over the internet. Also, last week of summer, please do look for that. The Kickstarter preview page is up right now. Our intention is to release it mid-August or late August, so that we actually want the Kickstarter to be running through the last week of summer. We thought that would be fun. So we're going to have that running very soon. So please go on that Kickstarter preview page if you're interested, and click on that so you get notified once we go live. And then Shakespeare, the card game, also please do keep your eyes out for that. We've got a website as well, alliesorenemies.com, and we're going to have information on that. There's a mailing list you can sign up to about that. But that one, we're getting pretty far on right now. I'm working with a terrific artist, Kevin Newman, who's also a board game designer here in London. I almost said Calgary. I forgot. Now we're being so nostalgic. So it's been really fun working with him on this game as well. So we're excited to get that out. And I'm not sure how we're releasing that as well. That may end up going straight to retail. That may end up going through GameFound. I don't know. So follow us on there. Follow our mailing list. Thankfully, with a little card game, you got a lot more flexibility on how you're going to release it, because obviously it's a lot cheaper to produce. So we're figuring that out. That's a weird thing to say in a plug. But anyway, we're also going to be releasing Shakespeare, the card game, soon. So if you're interested in that, please follow that as well.
Nice. Sounds solid.
Thanks so much for talking to us, Shawn. It's been really lovely having a little nostalgic walk back through my last week of summer, and making me think of all the kind of music that I listen to, which I'm too embarrassed to even say the names of some of the bands.
Oh, some of the bands that I self-edited there. I should really have that list on there. I should really just have all the ones that I went, who do I want to say that?
I think a lot of mine have been cancelled now. I don't think I can. Yeah. I don't think I can.
Oh, okay. No, mine haven't. There's some. Oh, one I forgot. Boys to Men. We were wearing cardigans like crazy at that time because of Boys to Men. They were amazing. I stand by that one though.
Well, thank you very much, Shawn, for having you on the show. It's been fantastic sort of reminiscing and talking to you about your games.
So for all of Shawn's goodies, please look at his website, Instagram, the Kickstarter that will hopefully be coming live soon, and engage with all his stuff. And it looks fantastic.
And as always, please do that for us as well. So please give us a like, please share, subscribe, all the usual bits and pieces for Whose Turn Is It Anyway podcast. And yeah, keep an eye out for all of Shawn's bits and pieces. Be fantastic. It's been great to have him on, reminiscing and talking about small publishing as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Shawn.
Until next time, Whose Turn Is It Anyway?